Okay, we're back. The next step we're going to do is we're going to secure the surround to the basket. That's this outer edge right here. Now some speakers have foam surrounds like you see here. Generally those are used for lower frequency drivers. Even though it's an 18, sometimes it's used for more bass as opposed to subwoofer duty. So the foam surround gives you more excursion basically. Other surround variations would be accordion cloth, which is what was originally on here. Then still another version would be rubber, which is the same basic shape as this except it's made out of butyl rubber. And finally the last one would be a straight paper cone where the cone actually continues all the way to the edge and that's what's secured to the frame. In this case it's foam, so we're going to use a contact cement, this DevCon contact cement. And what this does is it basically holds it down and it keeps it so it doesn't come loose, and it also at the same time holds the gasket on. Now this is really important because much like centering the voice coil with the spider and the shims, we have to make sure this is centered. If it's too far one way or too far the other way, being as it's all one piece now, it'll throw the voice coil off center in the gap. So what we're going to do is we're going to let it rest with the shim still in place. As you can see, the shim is still right in there, so nothing has changed. And we're going to lift up the edge of the surround with one of these coffee stirrers that we used earlier. And as we lift it up, we're going to put a bead of glue underneath of it. One of the side effects of using this with foam is it's going to make it have like a ripple look to it, but that's okay because once it dries it'll flatten out. It's just a chemical reaction. And then when I put the gasket on top of it, it'll also compress it. At that point we're going to flip it over, and the driver's weight is actually going to keep it on there, but we'll let it tack up a little bit before we do it to make sure everything is secure. After that, we'll let that dry for maybe 20 minutes or so, and after that what we'll do is we're going to pull the shim out, and when we pull the shim out, we're going to solder the tinsel leads onto the lead out cables, which are right in the center here. You can see we were talking about earlier. We're going to trim those back, solder them, and then run the tinsel leads out, and then in the end they're going to get connected to right here, to these two terminals. So on the inside, I don't know if you can see, but on the inside there's two little metal tangs that we unsoldered earlier. I'll give you some light so you can see where they're going to come out. Whoop. One second, there we go. So right in here, those two holes, that's where the tinsel leads are going to come out, and they're going to lead over to that little metal tang you see sticking out right there. And then we're going to solder that on there, and that'll complete the electrical connection. If you look even closer, you can see inside there the bead of epoxy. You can see where the epoxy laid down with the cone and the spider and the voice coil joint. It's nice and clean, and the main thing is the very, very even bead. If you look at that carefully, you can see it's semi-clear, but if you look right, let me see if I can dial in for you a little better. Give me 1 second. If you look inside here, you'll see, sorry about this, people. Right down inside here, you can see where the epoxy is laid down, and it's not spilling up on the cone too high, and it's also not traveling too far beyond the joint into the spider. So this is basically how you want it to look. You want it to be a very clean, very consistent, even bead all the way around. You don't want blotches and blobs everywhere. You want it to be very, very, very consistent. You can catch it over in the light over there. You can kind of maybe get a little closer, and I'll try. This is really important. I want to make sure everybody can see this. If you look inside there, if you can see, there we go. So right in that area right there, you can see how it's a nice even bead, and that's how it's got to look. It can't be sticking out much further than where the cone meets the coil, otherwise it'll damage the spider. So that's pretty much how you want it to look when you're done. When you're done with your epoxy, confirm that it looks like that. If it doesn't, well, I guess try again harder next time. So we'll go back over to this. We're going to get this ready to do. I have an open tube already, but I'm not sure if I have enough, so we're not going to take any chances. We're just going to start with a fresh tube. Same chemical, just a different package. So, take our coffee stirrer, and we're going to lift up the edge of the surround like this, and I'm going to spin the basket. Actually, I might just use my hand, really. Take this, lift it up, and we're just going to put a nice even bead here. And you want to pay careful attention right around where the bolts go through. The reason is because when you put the bolt through, there's less metal for it to contact right here. So you want to make sure that there's enough glue, not too much, but enough to go through here. Don't let it go be in the gap and miss this, because then as the driver's playing, the cone will lift up in that area, the surround I should say. So make sure there's plenty of adhesive all the way around. So let's begin. Use the edge of the basket if you want as a guide. Just kind of go like this. A little more. Like that. Don't worry if it's not exactly even. This isn't too critical, because when you put the gasket on, it'll kind of push it into place and you'll be fine. So we'll keep going. Again, make sure you get it right by that bolt hole. Make sure you have enough there. You want to get a closer look at this and you can kind of see where it's at. I'll turn it around for you. So lift this up. And nice, even bead, especially around that bolt hole. That's important. Turn a little bit more. And if you'll notice that the surround is starting to wrinkle from the chemicals in the glue with the foam itself. You can see over here. Now we go again. It's I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure you have enough around those bolt holes. It's often overlooked. So here we go here. We're coming just about to the end. And let's go over it a little bit more to make sure we got enough. Okay, that pretty much does it. So we'll close this up. Now we're going to grab our gaskets, and there's 4 per driver. These are paper-backed cork. So this is what the gasket looks like before it goes on. It's just sections. Really, you can mount this either way. You could actually mount the cork out. You can mount the paper out. Generally, you mount the paper on the inside. Though some drivers have paper on the outside, so it's really a matter of preference. As far as what its purpose, it's going to work the same either way, so it doesn't matter. So with the orientation, as we did earlier, I usually start with the very bottom piece right here, and I work my way around. So before we do that, we're going to lay one more bead of glue on top of the surround. We'll press this gently into it. Again, the shim is still in place to make sure that the coil doesn't go off center from doing this, which it would. You can see what's happening here, the way it ripples, and that's totally normal. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our adhesive. I'm just going to put a nice little bead on top here as carefully as I can without getting it onto the surround. This is just to hold the gasket on. And this will compress and squeeze out. But the cool thing is that this bead we're putting on top will also work with the bead that's going to get squished out from underneath once the gasket goes in place. So you don't need a lot here, because this is just really to hold the gasket onto the surround, and then what's going to come out from underneath the surround will hold it to the frame. So let's put a little bit more around here. I feel like I'm doing an instructional video or something. And then just for good measure, I'm going to put one quick spin right on the outer edge. This isn't necessary, but it's a pretty large driver and we don't want that coming loose. So I'm just doing a quick little spin there. That's it. Alright, now we take our gasket. We have 4 of them. Put it back in the middle. Got some dust falling in there. And just start right here with the first hole. Now when you put this on, you don't want to push out, or I'm sorry, push inward, because it'll change the shape of the surround roll. So just set it pretty much just on there the way it's going to go. When it's all said and done, just like that. And give it a little push. Doesn't have to be perfect just yet, because that'll be taken care of by the next step. There's the first one. Go to the next one. Make sure that these little notches line up with the hole. Put the hole in the very center of it. And if you find that when you're putting them down it winds up leaving a gap between the 2 gaskets, that's okay. What's important is making sure that the hole is centered so you can get the anchoring screws in there. We'll show you that in a second. So let me lay this next one down like that. And as you're doing this, you're going to notice that the gap, the space between the edge of the surround and the gasket will be pretty consistent all the way around the edge. That's a good sign because that means that you're laying it down correctly. So do the next one. I think I might need a little bit more adhesive on the surround. I think it sucked it up a little bit. So you know what? This is unusual, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to pull these off real quick. I want to be sure this doesn't fall apart. Yeah, we can see, if you look closely, you can see that the glue is hitting in some spots, but not in others. So let's just pull these off. This won't make a difference really. It's not going to hurt anything. We'll pull this off and let's do another quick spin. You can see that the surround is porous, so it absorbs some of the adhesive. So I'm going to put a fresh layer down, a little more this time. We don't want the gasket falling off, so okay. Now let's do it again. Start from the bottom, same thing. Stick it on, compress it. The next one. Make sure the holes are lined up. A little bit might come out, and that's fine. Okay, the last one. Just put a little bit. This is really porous. And the last gasket. Press them down and make sure you, like I said, make sure you don't push this around or move this around as you're doing this, but make sure at the same time that the gasket, the outer edge of the gasket, is pressed outward towards the frame so there's no gap. Okay, just like that. Let this sit for a minute. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to flip it upside down so the weight of the driver itself compresses the gasket against the surround onto the frame. We'll let that dry for a little bit, and then when that's all done drying, we're going to come back and we're going to pull the shim out. We're going to solder our wires, put the dust cap in, solder the wires on the terminals, do a quick test, and we're done. And this driver will be ready for use. So when we come back, we'll cover that. For right now, let's dry for a little bit.